Welcome back to Chop for Time. Pastor Ben here. I'm sitting down with Pastor Thomas this week, and James, the intern, is back with us. So all of us are glad and happy this week as we look at our third week of study into Exodus.
Well, how was the weekend for you guys? As you can tell, allergies are the worst.
You are enjoying the good Eastern Kentucky Appalachian allergies,
it's
baby.
Awful.
Yes.
I hate it.
It's one of the
going
worst
back
things
home.
ever.
Of course, I'm going to laugh right now. Mine hit in the fall worse than I'll have a spring flare up every now and then, but the fall, for some reason, it gets me more than that. Of course, you could theologically say that the fall has affected us all.
Yeah. It's allergies definitely from the fall.
Feeling strong today.
It's better than on Sunday getting booed by your own staff. Might I point out.
Right. Yes. 2 staffers
Hey, I thought your joke was funny.
booing me. Yeah.
Did Kennedy boo as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was the original booer.
Oh, and then
Mandy just
joined
booed
in?
louder.
Oh, I see.
So Kennedy's kind of that kid that was hiding in the corner, like just spurring on the others to do it. So, yeah, both of them booed me.
How terrible.
It was bad.
Yeah. I give up on this. I'm going to have to hold it open.
Make sure
But-
you highlight both of those as it's closed on you both times.
Yeah.
So.
James, what were you up to this weekend?
Church. That's about it.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, church, and me and Jonathan played Madden for about 3 hours straight. So, and yeah, that's about it.
Fair enough. Wasn't too crazy then. And we were in Exodus 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
James, would you like to read that for us?
Yeah.
Is it the whole chapter?
1 through 22.
Yeah, 1 through 22.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so now a man from the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that she was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. She was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." One day after Moses had grown up, he went out where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, What I did must become known. When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flocks. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watched their flock. When the girls returned to Rael, their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he?" Rael asked his daughters. "Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land."
Cool. You had this split up into 3 main sections.
Yeah.
Talking about and in the last one we were talking about God's providence, which we can kind of see with the story about Midian, and the God is sovereign. Is that the other one? So God is sovereign was the first one.
Yeah.
I can't remember the second one. He's in charge.
Who's in control?
Who's in control?
Yeah.
Okay, who's in control? And that he, yeah. So do you want to quickly recap those three?
What we see, I think, portions of it is in that first 10 verses that you can see the hand of God on Moses at this moment. There's no doubt about that. Just from the way that everything's playing out, we see God's hand still kind of behind the scenes, still kind of moving pieces, but you can see him sovereignly in this story. There's no doubt about it. We can see how he's in control behind the scenes, moving pieces into place. Then we move into that second section, which is verses 11 through 15, and we see where Moses kind of starts taking things into his own hands. We highlighted that Moses really had a disdain for injustice. And we'll see that throughout the book of Exodus as the narrative continues. But here in this case, he sees an Egyptian taskmaster basically mistreating, beating a Hebrew slave at this point. And one of the things that I didn't go into detail in, and I really don't know if I would say I chopped it, but just from the overall mistreatment of the nation of Israel in their captivity, in their slavery, I wonder just how kind of over the top that this mistreatment was, that it went so far beyond what they would have typically done on a day-in, day-out basis, that it led Moses to doing something. So, it would have had to really be over the top, in my opinion. But we see that he takes the Egyptian man, and whether he means to or not, he takes his life. Then he looks around, just seeing if anybody saw that, kind of like we do as we fall. If you kind of have one of those embarrassing trips and you catch yourself, and then you're looking around to see if anybody saw you. And hid the man in the sand, buried him in the desert, basically. And then the next day comes about, there's two Hebrews having a disagreement. Moses tries to intercede again, and the one who was in the wrong said, "Hey, who made you prince and judge over us?" So at that point, Moses knows that, hey, something's up. Flees into Midian. So at that point, like you said, we start seeing God's providence and God sustaining Moses. Again, behind the scenes of this story, God is, we're not seeing anything, this big public display at this point. But even in the midst of Moses' own kind of repercussions of what he'd done, we still see God's providence and God sustaining him. Yeah. And that was our three main points that we took away from yesterday.
Yeah. And there was a strong application point at the end of, I think it was primarily around, especially that idea of who's in control. Yeah. And are you allowing God to be in control, or are you stubbornly holding on? James, what stood out to you from Sunday?
So I'd say for me probably, because I know Ben was talking about how we probably will, I know I have for sure. There's been multiple times when I read in Scripture and I'm like, why did God use this person or that person, especially like someone like, say, Peter, who's just obnoxious and just outlandish all the time. But Moses, I asked that question too for the fact of God shows up in the next chapter and God's like, yeah, go, and he's like, nah, I'm good. He just doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, well, God, why would you choose this person? But then when Ben was saying that on Sunday, I was like, well, I should be asking the question, not why did God choose Moses, but why would God choose someone like me or anybody else for that matter? Because he doesn't need any of us to get anything done, but it's not a need, it's a want for him to choose us. So then that kind of made me say, don't be too harsh on Moses because you're no better than he is.
There's a lot in this passage.
Yeah.
Compared to what we've done before, especially with Ephesians. We were doing 2 verses at a time, and now we're doing 22. So one thing that I find interesting, and this is maybe a little off topic because we haven't got there yet, is actually at the end. This is just a little detail about Ruel. Mm-hmm. So Ruel had 7 daughters, and Then it says, Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah. And later we find out his father-in-law is Jethro.
Mm-hmm. Good catch.
So,
I was wondering when that was going to come
or,
up.
like, either Jethro and Ruel are the same person with different names, or Moses didn't like any of these 7 daughters. and there was another guy that he stayed with whose daughter he did take a liking to. What's that all about? Do we know do we have any more detail on that?
So one of the things that I chopped yesterday, inadvertently chopped, because it's on the, if you go online, whatever version, if you're watching the video or the audio, I remembered it then.
Okay.
But I kind of challenged at the beginning of the message online to what we were talking about the other day, reading the Bible as if you don't know what's going to happen next. Right. Kind of that. I know it's tough for us to do, and it's difficult for us to put ourselves in that place, because most of us, chances are if you're watching this, then you know the overall story of Moses, at least the high points of it. But it's difficult for us to look at these stories and take them for what they truly, the gravity, that's truly behind them, because we know what the rest of the story is. I chopped that yesterday inadvertently because my dad joke was sabotaged.
I enjoyed it.
And thank you, James. But
you enjoyed the sabotage or the joke?
Both.
Yeah, I was going to say, just say both. It was a good moment. But anyhow, that immediately followed. That thought immediately followed my my online presentation. Because the camera did not heckle me as right. Mike Smith did, and Brooke and Daniel White and Mandy and Kenny. I'm not keeping records of wrongs here, but just this concept. So I'm going to kind of have that to stick kind of in my back pocket for a little bit of a later date.
Cool.
For that, the differences that we see there. But yeah.
I know something else I saw, and you made a good point of it, was that Moses wasn't really a nobody. Like he was born a Levite. Mm-hmm. So that's
which really meant absolutely nothing at that point.
Yeah, at that point.
Yeah.
But when it comes time for when God sets up the Levitical system and all that kind of stuff, the sacrificial system, God saying Moses is going to be your leader, because the Levites were the priests. They were the ones which makes sense on why God chose to have greater relationship with Moses than anybody else, because he's the head dude besides God, he's the head dude of the Israelites. So like Moses here, it's already showing that, before he's even born, he's going to be their leader. Yeah.
Well, and that, Moses is the one that recorded this. So it makes sense as you're recording what's already happened, and you're recounting the history of it. That really meant something major whenever Moses was recording this. So, a Levite man being married to a Levite woman and having a child, in retrospect, looking back on the history of the nation, was significant. At this time, it really wasn't.
Do you think it's almost like, because Paul in 1 Corinthians kind of has to defend his apostleship? You think this is almost Moses doing the same thing? Because I know there was like a lot of grumbling against Moses a lot of the time. So
could have been.
Moses, when he looking back writing on this, he's kind of writing like, I have authority over you because I'm a Levite. So that could possibly be, but I always kind of see it as almost like the same thing as Paul defending himself, and then this is Moses kind of defending himself a little bit.
Yeah. Or in the first chapter of Matthew, sort of defending the lineage of Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, and we even go back to Exodus chapter 1, and you kind of see that as well with the first, 7 verses, I think, where the genealogy and the kind of the lineage comes in as well. And there was some not concerned looks on the congregation's face, but you could tell that they were intrigued when I told them we was going to read the whole of 22 verses, and I read one and stopped and started breaking it. They were like, oh no, it's going to be a long day, friends. But that we'll come back to that. And like I said yesterday, I will make reference to that being very important. That on February 20th, I said that this is going to be very important. Nobody's going to remember that I said it was going to be very important. But I'm going to remind them that I said before that I was going to remind them that it was very important.
Yeah. So which areas did you end up chopping?
There was quite a bit about the Nile River.
Okay.
And a reason for that is kind of continually telling that narrative as we go. I got feedback from someone yesterday on the message that they were, talking about they really enjoyed it, but they really, one of the facts that they really enjoyed so far was just the building of this narrative that we're taking time to do. That you know that even if you don't know the story, by these first 3 weeks that this is leading to a much bigger story. So with the Nile River, I kind of threw in a few little what I felt pertinent facts in there. Is that without the Nile, there is no Egypt. There's a reason that Egypt was where it was and still is where it is. It's right on the banks of the Nile, and that's for a reason. And then the 6 million gallons of water per second that flows. I mean, that's a lot of water, like a massive amount of water.
Don't they let the river I don't know if they do that intentionally or maybe it's just because it's so big, but it overflows each year and they rely on it to water their crops and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so without the Nile,
it enriches the soil.
Mm-hmm, yeah, Egypt wouldn't exist without the Nile.
Yeah. So there was quite a bit. I did a lot of research into the Nile. Not only we're going to unpack a lot of its spiritual significance when we get to the messages on the 10 plagues, but there's also a lot of physical significance, and I did a lot of research on that and just chose not to include that just yet. There will be bits and pieces of it that come out more, as we go along. Another section was the birth of Moses, because in a lot of translations, each translation gives some indication that could be interpreted that Moses was special, as far as either that the parents looked at him and, he was already 27 pounds and ripped when he was born. I don't know what the physical, I don't know how you look at a baby and go, that baby's just better than all the other babies. That's not what that meant. And then there's some that believe that because of these translations, that they looked upon Moses and because his mom and dad were Levites, which again, at this point, didn't have anything to do with anything, that they knew that there was spiritual significance to this young man, that he was, they had this birth announcement a la Mary, of the deliverer. And that's just not the case.
Do you think maybe it was just how every mom sees their kid?
It is.
It's just oh yeah, my kid's gonna be so special.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, sure, I guess.
And
yeah.
Listen, my mom thought that, and if you could look at me now. I mean, there's direct evidence to the contrary. But my baby picture, man, I was ugly. I mean,
that's always one of those things, when I'm at that age now when a lot of my friends are starting to have babies, and then people posting pictures look how cute it is, and it's some sort of
it's like an
slimy
alien.
beam.
There have been some that I've looked and go, that's a cute baby.
Yeah.
Newborn, like that.
Yeah.
But most of them you're like, huh?
Yeah.
I look
it has potential to be cute in a couple of years.
Yeah. I look like a straight up marshmallow when I was a baby. Just chunky. That's all I was.
But yeah, I mean, there's really no original, and again, I'm not a Greek expert, much less a Hebrew.
I was about to say.
Ancient Hebrew, man.
I was about to say, good thing this wasn't written.
Yeah, good thing. Because, I mean, as complicated as original Greek, Koine Greek was, Hebrew, ancient Hebrew is just way above my intelligence level. But all indications just point to there wasn't a greater significance physically to Moses as opposed to any other child during that time, nor was there some type of revelation epiphany type thing from a spiritual level that his mom or his dad had. Like, everybody sees their baby as special, right? Mm-hmm. Right.
But I do like...
At least you should.
Yeah.
One cool thing is the time and significance she took to make the basket. When, like you said, there was no YouTube. She couldn't figure out how to do this in a quick second.
Which I would have probably starved to death back then if there's no YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, either she had just learned a skill naturally over time, which probably did, but like I love how she took the time to make the basket when I don't know if like the other mothers may have did the same, or if they just threw their babies into the water and said whatever. But
well, and another fact that didn't make it into the message, she was not defying the edict.
Yeah.
Right. She was not being disobedient to the edict of Pharaoh here. I mean, she took probably additional steps that most of them didn't take, and was maybe a little bit more careful. But at the end of the day, when she couldn't hide the baby anymore, she put the baby in the Nile.
You know, I always had this like, I remember when I first became a Christian and I first read this, and I guess maybe Prince of Egypt has something to do with it too, or something, or maybe just like watching movies on Exodus. But like, I feel like a lot of people have this misconception that one, like Moses, like didn't know that he was an Israelite, or like he didn't know who Yahweh was.
Right.
And then like another one, I kind of thought Moses didn't know who his mom was, but then obviously he does, because they bring her back to him, and she kind of raises him for a little bit before she gives him back to Pharaoh's daughter. So I'm like, he knew who his parents were. Yeah. So like that's something that I kind of realized reading this. I was like, one of the very first times, I'm like, he knows who his parents were. But I like how in this one it says like his sister was watching as he was being just floated down the river.
Did he really float though?
Yeah.
As we read this?
No, probably not.
Because I think it says that she placed him in the reeds and had his sister stand off at a little bit of a distance to watch what happened to him. Mm-hmm. And then it says that Pharaoh's daughter came down with her attendants, and there was the baby in the reeds.
Yeah.
Maybe there was an extra level of care here that his mom took, and she scouted out where maybe the odds were going to be the best.
Yeah. The other thing about the Nile, anytime I think about the Nile, I think about crocodile or dinosaur-infested waters. Like, you know,
like where we're going.
Well, because the Nile crocodile is like one of the biggest, meanest crocodiles, and that's just another thing about like God provision. And if there's a crying baby, I think a crocodile might hear it, or might go for it. It's one of the, maybe it wasn't placed, like in the Prince of Egypt, maybe he wasn't placed in the middle of a raging river. And somehow miraculously survived. Maybe he was carefully placed in the reeds.
But maybe he was. Maybe he was. Yeah.
But I know, like you said, like Pharaoh's daughter is like the complete opposite of Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Like, because Pharaoh was like you said, like he's the kind of evil, like he's almost Hitler evil, where like he just like he's okay with killing people and then going to sleep at night. And he's fine with it. But like Pharaoh's daughter obviously isn't.
Had some compassion.
Yeah.
So she took pity. Yeah.
So I think it's funny how she was the one that happened to be right there when she found Moses and not somebody else. And so like you said, like God's moving these pieces perfectly where they needed to be, and it was the right person to be there at the right time. Yeah. So
and it doesn't take away from God's sovereignty. If Moses' mother had scouted this out, had decided that I need to place the baby right here, we could look at that and say, that was her. Could it possibly be God working through her? Because we're talking about a behind-the-scenes movement right here up until this point in this story.
Yeah. So that's Exodus 2 is pretty cool.
It is, and there's a fairly significant time gap that we experience
that's
here.
What I was going to say. We get so little of his growing up,
his time in Egypt. Yeah, because he would have probably been returned to Pharaoh's daughter 3-4 years old. Yeah, something like that, because that would have been the time that he, I think, I could stand to be corrected there, but around that 3 to 4 would be when they were completely weaned from their mother. So that would be when he was returned.
It's almost like Jesus. Like we don't hear a lot, which again points. He's so much, a lot of similarities. Right. Like he's a type of Christ. So it's like
which is the theological term for that is.
Christology.
There you go.
But we're about to see a Christophany in the next.
Yeah.
So it's like, even like that, like we don't hear a lot about his growing up. Like that's points directly to Christ, because we didn't hear a lot about. We hear like one thing from Luke. That's it.
Yeah. Because he goes from 3 or 4 years old to old enough to take out an Egyptian soldier.
He's around 40.
Yeah. So I mean, he's clearly not a child,
right?
So a lot of time has passed, which I'd love if we could hear a little bit more about everything else that was going on.
Yeah.
You know, but
Well, they make movies about that, right?
they do.
Okay.
They do. So you can watch that. But that is the funny thing about whenever you do watch the movies, like we're already halfway through the movie, and we're only on chapter 2.
Exactly.
Like there's a lot.
Yeah.
I think people's assumption of Exodus is going to be the Moses story that we see in the movies, but we're already halfway through in the second chapter. So I feel like there's going to be a lot that we start uncovering that people have never heard before.
Yeah.
If they haven't read it.
Yeah. Well, and what we cover next week, we're also going to see, because we're going to finish chapter 2 this coming Sunday, and that's just like 3 verses.
Yeah.
But that's going to also be an incredible amount of time. So from Exodus, from Genesis chapter 2, from Exodus 2, the beginning of it to the end of it, there's a lot of time there, because it marks Moses's, what we covered on Sunday marks his beginning, basically, of his time in the wilderness, his personal wilderness.
It must have been a long time, because it's 23 through 25, so just those 2 verses, and literally the first verse says, during that long period, the king of Egypt died.
Yep.
So that's another king that's dead, and then another one takes his place.
Yeah. Spoiler alert: the king or the pharaoh that was the genocidal king is not the same pharaoh that Moses approaches.
Yeah.
And according to which timeline you believe, they may not have been raised as brothers. For all of you Charlton Heston Ten Commandment fans, they may not have been raised as brothers.
Yeah, so this new Pharaoh, when Moses shows up, he may know who he is, but probably didn't have that relationship with him like the last one did.
Yeah. Well, there stands a chance, again, according to which timeline you believe as to which Pharaoh was in charge at the beginning, and then who the next Pharaoh was. There is a chance that they could have been raised very closely in the same family.
Yeah.
There's a chance.
But can you imagine like Moses coming back, him expecting to be like, oh man, I got to face this genocidal maniac, and then he gets there and he's like, who are you? Like,
I wonder if Moses knew, though. Because you would
With that
think
amount
that
of time, I mean,
you would think that the death of a pharaoh or a king would have even reached
Spread.
the ears
Probably.
of a shepherd in the vast wilderness.
or if it's decades passing,
yeah,
maybe the guy was really old.
right.
You know,
yeah,
but
maybe he was killed because pharaohs.
that happens.
They tend to
They have some
die
enemies.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, were there any other areas that were chopped or stood out, or?
Just the fact that Moses was obviously a tough dude, like because I know like in the Prince of Egypt, he just like scrawny looking and stuff, and it's like the movie's awesome, but it's like Moses killed a guy and then had the strength to go and hide him, and then he runs off these shepherds, and then after doing that, he's already probably wore out, but then tends to draw the water for him. So like, not messing with Moses. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, he was not a soft individual.
Right.
I would just like to take this, completely shifting gears, but going back to me not keeping records of wrong during my time of offense at the beginning of my message yesterday. I would just like to publicly call out my elders, because I asked for them to come to the front of the church yesterday so we could begin church discipline.
For someone stealing your dad joke?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what else would we be disciplining people for? But I was a little disappointed. Now, let's forget that I skipped the first 2 steps of biblical church discipline. All right, that's how egregious this was. Let's forget about me going face to face, and let's forget about the going 2 to 3 in private. This needs to go before the church. I tried to Matthew 18 and fast forwarded a little bit, and they completely disregarded me.
Well, if you had a Moses, it would have been solved right there.
Right? Come on, Thomas, pick it up, man. But I digress.
Yeah. Well, I think the key for this coming Sunday is, for all of you watching, if you're going to be here on Sunday, please go ahead and read verses 23 through 25. Anticipate any dad jokes that might be made and come up with a better one.
No, I'm hurt now. I'm hurt.
Yeah, that's exciting. So we're finishing chapter 2 this week, and then on to chapter 3 after that.
Yeah, chapter 3 after that.
Things are going to get a little crazy.
But let me say something in all seriousness, though. I love that type of atmosphere when we can be together as a church family, and
Laugh,
we can
banter.
laugh. We can have it is about bringing glory to God. It is about exalting Him and rightly dividing His word. But moments like that where we're just even bantering back and just communicating back and forth, it's really refreshing. It really is.
For sure.
Yeah, I wonder if the churches had that like relationship with Paul or something, where Paul was saying something and then they just blurt something out, and Paul's like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Get out.
Well, I mean, they did life together. A whole lot more than we do today.
You're right.
Eating together all the time, and I'm sure it does sound quite nice.
Pastoral roasts.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we'll be back here again next week. Hopefully, I'll be able to pronounce my M's.
There will be additional syllables and drawn
Hopefully.
out enunciations.
Yeah.
Maybe your silences would be better.
Maybe. I might have just cut them out by that point if they don't. So, but yeah. Thanks for joining us, Chop for Time. We'll be here again next week.
Glad and happy.
Out.